Best Available Podcast. This is episode 27 at night. Yeah, I'm not going to do the SpongeBob voice, but that was something that Matt said in the open right as we started recording, so I figured we fit that one in there. As I said, the schedule will change a little bit over the next couple months, but we'll still get you at least one episode a week, and then if anything really big happens, we'll do some emergency podcasts throughout the week. That way we make sure we get everything. Day after the Super Bowl, which was, we talked about in our Super Bowl preview. We were both very excited for it. It ranked high on our level of intrigue, and in some aspects it was fun to watch. In other aspects, it really wasn't as good of a game as people expected, which this is the third time in a row now, Matt. CBS has kind of had a stinker for the Super Bowl, which I kind of feel bad about. But before we get into all that, before we get into Super Bowl and baseball, college basketball, everything else we're going to talk about, Matt, we're now in our first full week of February. So how are you doing? How have things been?
Well, we're in, I guess, week 2 of Snowmageddon. So we got a big snowstorm at the top of last week. Then you could correct me if my days are wrong, Ryan. So we got one around this time last week, around Sunday, Monday. Then we got another one, right? We've had so many snowstorms in the past couple days. So we had one yesterday, and I think I'm missing another one. Who the hell knows? We had a lot of snow. I'm tired of it. I'm past it. The snow was cute the first couple times, Ryan, but now I have to go out there 3 or 4 times a day and try and shatter some ice off the refreeze and then shovel it. And you're going to say, oh, whoa, you like shoveling, Matt. Yeah, I like shoveling fluffy snow, not rock hard, a sheet of ice underneath the fluffy snow. So I'm sick of it. And we got a whole other month of it. Apparently there's like 3 more snowstorms we're going to get in the next week, which is stupid. We're not going to see the ground until March Madness probably, so I'm sick of it. We're past the cute phase of winter, and now we're into the get me to spring phase of winter.
This is not a meteorology podcast, although that would be kind of cool to do one day. But I was reading some meteorologists that I trust, and this is going to be an active pattern for this state over the next couple of weeks. There's actually it's not going to affect us tomorrow. We're just going to get rain, but tomorrow there's one system, then Wednesday night through Friday could be another, then Valentine's Day, and then February 17th, 19th, 21st, 22nd. It's a very active time. So this is winter. This is payback for us not really getting anything the past 2 years, clearly, because now we're going to get a lot. But hey, listen, I see the videos of baseball trucks making their way down to Florida, so that does mean that spring is around the corner, as far away as it seems. Matt, you are wearing your Boston Red Sox apparel, so you think that baseball is on the way pretty soon. How excited are you for the Red Sox season? Because I know the roster has some question marks, I think I'm going to say, kindly.
Yeah, so do I think baseball is going to come soon? I'll believe it when the players go down on the field. We all know what happened last year. We're going to do our State of Baseball podcast at some point. But when I see my guys out there on the field, then I'll know baseball's back. I don't look at the trucks because the trucks went down last time, and then, we all know what happened after that. So when I see a ball being thrown from hopefully Eduardo Rodriguez or Chris Sale, then I'll know that we're back in business. But I guess I'm excited to win 70 games, Ryan. It's just a really fun thing I have to look forward to. Trading away every good player that I have at the deadline, that'll probably happen. But, I was very anti-Heim Bloom, but I'm now lukewarm on him. So we're in the middle. He's starting to win me over. Going back and looking at the deals he's made outside of the Mookie Betts trade, which really he had no say in. Outside of that one, he's been doing pretty well. So we'll see. But yes, Ryan, I'm excited to win 70 games. It's going to be spectacular.
Well, we do have some big baseball news that we need to talk about in a little bit, but of course we do have to start with the big sporting event which was Super Bowl LV. It's a shame that because the Las Vegas thing came together so late that they couldn't put Super Bowl LV in LV. I thought that would have been nice branding, but it just didn't. It just wasn't meant to be. But it was in Tampa. Originally, there were supposed to be 22,000 fans in the stands. It then turned to 25,000. I think I read shortly before the Super Bowl. So they let more fans in. I don't know if we're going to talk about that. Let's just start the game first. It was, as I said, not as close as people thought it was going to be. The Kansas City Chiefs from the get-go looked off, and clearly, and we talked about it in our preview, their offensive line, Reid and Bieniemy had schemed the offense well, but it just seems like missing 2 starting tackles instead of just 1 was a big deterrent. You had guys playing out of position, and we could see Mahomes is running for his life, and the offense as a whole, they just never really got going, and they scored only 3 field goals. I don't think anybody thought that they were going to score 9 points heading into the game. So let's start there, Matt, because I had this conversation with somebody yesterday. When you look at the Chiefs' offense against the Tampa Bay defense, how do you break down the credit? Do you think that Tampa Bay had a great defensive game plan they executed, or would you say a lot of it was just because of the injuries that Kansas City had suffered on the offensive line?
Well, I think the injuries definitely played a part, but what resulted from that part, Ryan, was an aggressive Todd Bowles defense that got to the quarterback. And I think a lot of the credit has to go to the defensive game plan to say, you know what, it's the Super Bowl. We're just going to apply the pressure and try and chase Patrick Mahomes around, and that's what they did. I mean, I get there was injuries, and I think that's part of, not blame, but that's what happened. But as a result of that is, and I know what you're referencing, the defense had one of the better performances we've seen from a team on that side of the ball in recent years in terms of what they were able to do against that offense. I mean, it reminds you of the Patriots a couple years ago, what they did to that Sean McVay offense, right? Held them to 3 points. And game plan in the Super Bowl, and I get it was kind of a home field advantage, but regardless, I think no blame really should be put on Patrick Mahomes. I think anyone who is saying, oh, this is the same guy that gets all this attention on SportsCenter, I saw that take, Ryan. Oh, like, why are we blaming him? Why? The guy ran close to, what was it, like 500 yards on the ground, right? Running around trying to be chased by Tampa Bay defense guys. Like, I don't know. For me, there's no blame on Mahomes. Not really too much on Reid and Bieniemy either. It's really just the injuries, and then as a result, the defensive line and front seven just applying pressure right from the get-go.
I saw a lot of Mahomes slander as you did, as you were referring to, which I didn't really understand. Some of the things that he was trying to do on one foot, number one, because he has an injury that's going to need to be operated on at some point in the offseason. He was still running around, as you said, and a large number of yards because the protection just wasn't holding up. And still, we see these throws where he's parallel to the ground and he just yips it all the way to the goal line. And then I forget who the receiver was, but it hit him right in the face mask. This guy who's almost falling to the ground still managed to place a perfect ball. It hit the guy right in the face and he couldn't catch it. There were some throws he was making that throughout the season his receivers catch him, but he just didn't get any help last night, and that resulted in statistically what was one of his worst performances of his career. But when you look at it in context, I agree. I can't place any blame on the guy. I loved what Tampa Bay did defensively. I said in this conversation I had yesterday, regardless of the injuries, Todd Bowles crafted an exceptional game plan, considering what happened in the regular season when his defense got shredded, especially in the first half. Todd Bowles made the adjustments he needed to make, and he was aggressive, but he only sent 4 guys a lot of the time. He trusted his 4 guys up front to produce enough pressure And along with that, the secondary, which we said was a question mark, the secondary, which coming into the season people said was a major weakness, one of the worst units in the league, they did all their coverages exceptionally well, I think is the best way to put it. They had great coverage all night. They bottled up Tyreek Hill. They bottled up Kelsey. They made it so that when Mahomes was scrambling around 30, 40, 50 yards per play, the scramble drills that they were, showcasing, they were 100% right all night. And I think if he's told anybody that the Chiefs were going to score 9 points going into the game, they would have said, no way. I don't care about the injuries. There's no way Mahomes is only going to score 9 points. And that's what happened. I think we need to give this defense a lot of credit for what they were able to pull off.
Yeah, so I think the official number I just checked from the next gen stats for the NFL, 497 yards before his passes or any kind of what he did on the play, he was running around, right? Which is crazy. It's probably, if you combine it, I don't have the number in front of me, but that's probably as more than the amount of yards in the entire game. So, to me, I don't get the slander at all. And I don't even really put it on Reid and Bieniemy because people say, well, they abandoned the run. I'm like, well, of course they did, because the snap goes back to Mahomes and there's 3 guys past the offensive line by that point. So it's a shame that the Tampa Bay defense won't get really a lot of the credit for it, Ryan, because people want to try and hammer down Mahomes. They want to hammer down greatness. We've seen this for 20 years with Brady. Brady goes out there and wins and wins and wins whenever he loses, but they just hammer him down regardless of if it was his fault or not, and that's what they're doing with Mahomes. So you feel bad for the guy, but at the same time, he's 24, 25. He'll be fine. But I think this also cements the fact that he's probably not going to ever catch Brady. I don't care what his fiance says on Twitter of, oh, just wait, Tom's twice his age. He's never gonna catch Tom Brady in terms of what he's done, and I know we're gonna talk about it, but Mahomes will be back. But I think we talked about it last week, Ryan. Will he be able to kind of put himself on that trajectory to Tom at the top? And I think this kind of solidifies he's going to be like tier 1A.
And I think we both need to make it clear that's okay. We're going to be very blessed to watch this guy perform at the highest level for the next 10 to 15 years. He doesn't need to catch Brady.
I think that's
Go ahead.
That's the sad part, Ryan, is that us saying that, people take it as we're bashing Mahomes. You got to understand who we're comparing him to. Like, you're comparing him to the best player in NFL history, just the most successful quarterback to ever play the game. So he has more Super Bowls than any other franchise. So those comparisons have to stop, because it puts a lot of unfair pressure on him, not to mention the pressure he faced yesterday on the field running around from some of those guys. And just shout them out, Ryan. I mean, Jason Pierre-Paul and Ndamukong Suh, like Vita Vea, who like shattered his entire leg or his ankle or something mid-season. So these are older guys, and they were out there chasing around probably the best quarterback we have right now, him and Aaron Rodgers, in terms of just statistics. But you got to give those defensive linemen some credit, and those linebackers, because those are some names that we kind of cast aside a few years ago. They talked about it on the broadcast, like Sue and Pierre-Paul, and we didn't know if they were ever going to return to form, and they looked pretty solid.
Well, let's switch gears here for a second and talk about this guy that we haven't talked about a lot yet, and that is Tom Brady. Statistically, it wasn't his best game of the season, but I thought that he looked very good, especially after the NFC Championship game. Heard a lot of slander about, oh, there's no way Tom's going to be able to go into the Super Bowl. The way he played that second half, I wouldn't be surprised if that's how he played in the Super Bowl. He didn't look good. He held the team back, this and that. I said it in our Super Bowl preview, and I'm guilty of not heeding my own advice. Never count out touchdown Tom. I counted him out. A lot of people counted him out, and He looked very good. I understand he only passed for 200 yards, but this was a vintage Brady performance. He was able to put the ball where he wanted all night long. He looked comfortable in the pocket. He made quick reads. It was a Super Bowl performance, and you know that he provided this team with the leadership that it needed, having been there for so long in that situation. I like that he was jawing with Tyrann Mathieu. I thought that was kind of funny. You could just tell that Brady was in his own zone all throughout the game. The camera shots cutting to him. I'm not going to get into what the 7 rings means yet, but Matt, I think we need to talk about Brady from a more broad perspective about what he was able to accomplish in a season like this with a brand new team, a coach with one of the more intricate systems in the league, in a season where you don't have a preseason or training camp, with the COVID protocol, something he's never had to deal with in his career, and yet he was able to take this team. I know it wasn't just him, but he was able. One of the reasons why this team made the Super Bowl and won the Super Bowl. And I think for all of that and all the stuff I'm not saying, that's extremely impressive.
Well, not to mention, just in the postseason alone, they didn't win their division. So they had to win 3 straight road games against the NFL's, number 2 defense in Washington, or number one of the top 3 defense in Washington. Then you go and play Drew Brees in a Superdome. Then you go to Lambeau and play Aaron Rodgers. I mean, that's a top-tier defense and then 2 former MVPs and Super Bowl champions. And then you got to go beat the defending Super Bowl champions, luckily at their home venue, but that just adds to what was a crazy year, and it's only fitting that the most consistent thing in our football lives over the past 20 years wins during the most crazy, turbulent, inconsistent kind of year we've had overall. And it just shows how unfazed he is and how kind of steady and a calming presence. And, it was kind of weird to see him winning for another team last night. Didn't really know how to feel about that, especially him throwing touchdowns to Gronk. And multiple former Patriots caught touchdown passes last night. But, yeah, I don't really know why there's still Tom Brady haters. I still see a lot of them coming out of the woodwork. They do every year, Ryan. So I know this for the past 20 years, or especially the past, I guess, 7 or 8 that I've been on Twitter or whatever. They come out of the woodwork every year in January or February, whenever Tom's kind of, not playing well in the playoffs, but he still wins. They're saying, oh, well, maybe this is it. Maybe this is the year finally Tom stops. Because they're haters. They can't be happy just to appreciate greatness. And it's the same people that'll, say, oh, well, Tiger Woods is washed up, or, oh, Serena's not going to win anymore. It's the same people for every single figure. Oh, LeBron's not going to be effective in the NBA. You know what I mean, Ryan? It's the same people. So you got to stop hating on Tom Brady. You look ridiculous. Whoever's doing it, just stop. He's not a system quarterback. Clearly, I think that's, to your point also, Ryan, came into a new system, as you mentioned, one of the more intricate ones in the NFL. And listen, he got the job done in a year where there was no preseason or anything.
I do want to say it was nice to see Gronkowski make his triumphant return. There was kind of that storyline going into the game, you don't kind of out-Rob Gronkowski. He hasn't contributed a ton this season, but you know that Brady's going to rely on him a lot because he trusts him. And lo and behold, Gronkowski catches 2 touchdown passes. He was targeted 7 times. He caught 6 of them for 67 yards. Best performance he had all season considering the circumstances. And that might even be the case statistically too. I would have to double check. But just everything this Tampa Bay offense tried to do last night, it worked. You had 2 running backs who were able to get the yards they wanted when they wanted to get them. They found the holes. They powered through. They broke tackles. We already talked about Brady in the passing game. Just every aspect of this Tampa Bay performance, it was one of the more dominating performances I think we've seen in a while in a Super Bowl. For a matchup going in where people expected close scores, maybe Kansas City wins by 3 or 4 points or somewhere around there. It's mind-boggling that Tampa Bay was able to dominate both sides of the ball like they did. I mean, 31-9. Nobody thought this would be 31-9. Nobody. Nobody at all.
Yeah. I think the one big thing that we forget too, one thing that I talked about back in August when we were kind of sizing up this team was whether or not they're going to be able to protect Tom Brady, right? And they had a couple kind of losses on the offensive line throughout the year of some key pieces. And they were able to still be consistent. And I can only remember maybe one or two times that Brady faced pressure last night, right? I mean, they kept him up, and it's one thing that was always the narrative up in New England was if you could keep him upright and in the pocket, he's going to go down and give you a chance to win. He did that and more. And Ryan, to your point on Gronk, I would argue he's had one of the more productive seasons he's had just because of what he's done blocking. I mean, he's turned into more of a blocking tight end, and he takes pride in that, right? He's kind of got that little extra crazy in him to just go out there and like run a guy into the ground, and he enjoys that. And that's kind of how he was the last year or two in New England, and I think that's his new role. And whenever he could go out there and catch a touchdown, he's going to enjoy it like he did yesterday. They maximized every single player they had, as you said. Like Leonard Fournette, we didn't know where he was going to play football. And then he came to Tampa Bay and really kind of found his stride as the season went on. And, there's other guys on the team like that too. And, yeah, it's all I think it was every touchdown they scored, Ryan, was from an off-season acquisition.
So, oh, no, go ahead.
So in a year when there was basically no off season, right, in terms of OTAs or any kind of preseason action, like it was very weird training camp, to have all your point scorers outside of your kicker be off season acquisitions, it's a pretty big deal, and it shows what they were able to do over the course of really the back half of the season after their bye week.
So I would be remiss, and we would be remiss, if we didn't. So we've talked about the game. We've gotten our thoughts out. There were things going on around the Super Bowl that didn't have to do with the 60 minutes that were played on the field. The first thing I wanted to bring up and get your opinion about, it's something that Jim and Tony slipped in right at the end of the game when probably a lot of people had already turned off the game and gone to sleep. With about 4 minutes left in the final quarter, Jim gave one of the most PR type of someone reading it into his headset. All right, listen, we need you to say this. Just get through these words and we'll move on. Britt Reid, that accident that occurred a couple of days before the Super Bowl, a guy with multiple DUIs who once again was caught drinking and driving and sent a child to the hospital with life-threatening injuries. That was really glossed over. That was never, as I said, it was mentioned 4 minutes left in the game when a lot of people probably turned it off. The game was already over. Do you think that had any type of impact on the way the Chiefs performed? Do you think that might have been even a little bit of a distraction at all? I think it was a little bit of a distraction.
Yeah, I think it's hard for us to kind of gauge it because we're not really in that locker room, right? So we don't really know kind of the relationships that are within there. I definitely played a little bit of a role. I definitely would be on my mind, right? It would probably be on yours too if something like that happened a couple of days before you're going to play in the biggest game of your life. Yeah, I noticed that too, right around the 4 minute mark, and then they kind of went right back to talking about Tom Brady, I think, or something. Yeah, and I think everyone kind of forgot about that headline already, right? I mean, it's completely out of the news cycle, but I think it definitely could play a role. How much of it, I guess, would depend. Obviously, we're not part of the team, so we don't know inside that locker room, but I would assume a little bit, yeah.
And now the other thing, which I think more people probably paid attention to, was the fact that in a global pandemic, they let in more people than they said they were going to. And then to honor healthcare workers, they had a healthcare worker flip the coin at what's probably going to end up being a super spreader event. You had the video before the game of everyone wearing a mask around Brady when they were walking through the tunnel to the locker room. but Tom wasn't wearing a mask. Everybody else was, but he didn't. It just, you would think almost a year into this thing, you would kind of understand maybe how to present your event and everything around it in a way that would make it seem like you at least care a little bit about the optics of what you're trying to do. But it seems like the NFL just didn't care at all, which is, it's a little weird to me. I know it's your big crown jewel event, not just for the league, but worldwide, but I feel like they could have gone about things a little differently than they did.
Well, Ryan, I think, so we've had, this is now the second championship, well, to not be held in a bubble, right? And I guess the World Series kind of was, right? I mean, they let in fans, so I don't really consider that a bubble, in my opinion, right? A bubble is what the NBA and the NHL did, just empty arena and go kind of thing. And I think both of those kind of responsibly kind of showed that we can still do sports and still be fans and watch the game. You know what I mean? You know what I'm trying to say, right? In baseball, we all forgot the Justin Turner thing that happened in the final game. So that was the last memory we had up until yesterday of a sports championship of the Big Four. Because like you even look down further, right? I mean, like the PGA Tour didn't have a lot of fans, or if any. The WNBA was in a bubble. Everyone else was kind of in a bubble, no fans. The U.S. Open, I think, didn't have fans. So when you go back up to the NFL, as someone who hasn't seen anyone outside of his immediate family since this time last year, it's kind of frustrating. It's kind of frustrating when I look out my window and I see people having Super Bowl parties. When again, I haven't seen my family in a year. So yeah, not good optics, but you got to remember too, the whole World Series thing kind of moved into this. So I could see what they were going for, but the execution was not there for sure. The messaging kind of got a little confused. You see the intent, but the execution was not there.
Yeah, and obviously, there's not going to be a lot of people that care about this, but I just thought it would be fair to bring it up and bring the other story up, just in the interest of they were things that dealt with the Super Bowl that I felt deserved to be talked about. Another thing about the Super Bowl, this isn't about the pandemic or Britt Reid or what happened on the well, it kind of deals with what happened on the field, and it kind of deals with a team that is near where we live, the home team. There were a lot of Eagles fans that tried to point at what happened on the field last night for the Kansas City Chiefs offensively and say, that's why Carson Wentz was bad in 2020. And I guess this does kind of make sense to talk about if we transition a little bit, because it seems like he will get traded this week. I can't be any more clear. What happened during the Super Bowl was not why Carson Wentz was the worst quarterback in the National Football League in 2020. That's it.
Yeah, I'm sure everyone's going to be looking forward to the Carson Wentz trade emergency podcast this week. So stay tuned. Maybe it'll be next week. Who knows? Maybe we'll get lucky, Ryan, and you'll trade him to us, and then we could both be kind of angry in some capacity. So that'll be really great. Yeah, I didn't really understand that take. It shows what length Eagles fans will go to defend your guy, Ryan. It's just completely different things. Because the difference is, Ryan, is Mahomes actually ran out of the pocket and ran away from the defenders. Carson Wentz just steps into the guy. And we said this every single week he did it when he was a starter. Like, I think the most vivid memory was when they played the Giants on Thursday Night Football, and he stepped directly into multiple defensive linemen. On multiple occasions. Sometimes he just walked into his own offensive lineman's back and then fell down. So, yeah, I don't get it. It's kind of silly, but you only have to deal with it for a couple more days, Ryan. Then you can hopefully get Nick Foles back, and the boys will be ready to go again.
This jersey might be useful pretty soon. I didn't think it would ever be useful again after I bought it, but I guess it will be. Time will tell. A guy on Twitter, Brent Swartz at Eagle Central, said something and it completely summarized every feeling I've had about the fan base towards Carson Wentz. I've just never been able to put it this simply. I cannot imagine blindly supporting such a bad player so freely. Patrick Mahomes had a bad. By the way, that's the sentence number one. I'm just going to continue. Patrick Mahomes had a bad game. Carson Wentz was the worst QB in football for a season. And then a reply to that, which I also agreed with. Mahomes made amazing throws when he was basically on his stomach. Wentz had empty pockets and was hitting DBs between the numbers. I understand if you're a fan of Carson Wentz. I understand if you want to see the guy succeed. I understand if you think the organization wronged him. There's some truth to all of that. The organization didn't make his life as easy as it maybe could have been. But he was one of the worst players in the National Football League for an entire season. It wasn't everyone else's fault. You can put the blame on this guy. He's 28 years old. He's old enough to take it. If he's not, then he shouldn't be in the league. Carson Wentz deserves a lot of blame for his issues of not being able to evade the pressure, not being able to not fumble the ball, not being able to make reads, not being able to operate in a clean pocket, not being able to maneuver, not being accurate deep, not being accurate short, not being accurate towards the sidelines. All these things have been issues since he entered the league in 2016, and for 1 year, he improved on them a lot. For about another year and a half, he looked serviceable, but he's never really fully, consistently shown that he can be a franchise-level quarterback. It's okay to say that. You're not a bad Eagles fan if you point out his flaws, but please, for my sanity, stop blindly supporting Wentz. He deserves as much blame as anyone else for his regression. That's my speech.
Yeah, that had to be up there for silliest take of the night, right? You know, Tom Brady is overrated was another silly take. Patrick Mahomes deserves the blame for this loss was another silly take. That one had to be up there. We saw some silly takes. I'm sure we're going to talk about the halftime show, but suggestions for the next halftime show definitely were up there for silliest take of the night. But I think we're going to have to go with the Eagles one, Ryan. I think that has to be the worst thing I saw on Twitter of the evening.
I'm not going to talk about it anymore because I'm just going to get myself worked into a tizzy. I'm not going to talk about him anymore until he gets traded. And before we move on from the Super Bowl, you brought it up. The halftime performance that we were all waiting for was the weekend, on the weekend. Oh, yeah. And I did put out my Bruce Springsteen yearly tweet, but I did make the notion that I personally thought the weekend's halftime performance was the best I had seen in a while. I liked it. I thought it was enjoyable. As someone that doesn't listen to him a lot, I like the songs that he selected for his set list. I thought the entire performance was pretty solid. What did you think?
Yeah, I said this in our group chat. Anyone who was going to follow up last year with J-Lo and Shakira was just going to be a tough task to do, right? Because of how celebrated that performance was. And I think, he did well too. Like, it was just overall solid. And I'm very happy, Ryan. So we talked about the crowd, but I'm very happy they had him perform. You know how they usually bring everyone onto the field, like a concert vibe going on? They had him do it separately up at the top. And I was thrilled about that. And obviously that kind of limits what you're able to do. They had him with the whole little mirror thing that turned into a meme and everything. But listen, he followed up one of the better performances we've seen in our lifetime, and he did well. To anyone who criticized it, they probably don't really listen to The Weeknd or say he's not popular enough. But again, that's not really fair to say because if you look at the past 5 or 6 years, Ryan, I mean, there's like Beyonce, Bruno Mars, Coldplay, I think Lady Gaga is in there somewhere, J-Lo, Shakira. Like, it's going to be tough to top those names. It was solid. It was solid for me. Was it my favorite? No, but Listen, I enjoyed it. Would I sit and watch it again on YouTube? Sure. Couldn't say that about some of the other ones in our lifetime.
It wasn't my favorite either. My favorite was Bruce Springsteen. That was my favorite halftime performance. But as you said, the weekend was good.
And you got to give the NFL credit, though. They've pretty much nailed it in terms of name value over the past, pretty much since we're in high school, right? So they've been able to get the names. And for the people who say, well, the weekend's not a big name, I mean, if you look at his past year of his body of work, I think Glenn was the one who said it. I mean, he's had so much success just in this calendar year alone. Well, not this calendar year, this past year, I guess, because whatever the case. So, yeah, I give him props. He did well.
Well, there's a lot of things we could talk about still about the Super Bowl. We kind of just scratched the surface, but there was a big MLB signing that happened late last week, so we had to wait to talk about it until today. We actually, if you listen to our Super Bowl preview, we actually did mention it a little bit in case you listened to the entire thing, but
yeah, got a lot of airtime.
We did, yeah. We tried to give it a fair shot, but we wanted to talk about it more on its own, away from the Super Bowl. Trevor Bauer did not go to the New York Mets, as one much maligned writer said he was going to do. He went to the Los Angeles Dodgers for 3 years, $102 million. Opt out after each of the first 2 years, $40 million in 2021, $45 million in 2022. It's a little shocking. I don't know if anyone ever thought Trevor Bauer would get $40 million in a single season, but credit to him. He's done enough to warrant that contract, at least in my opinion. And so now he goes to a team that really didn't need another starting pitcher, but now they have him, so good for them. We'll start with this. I'm trying to think about how I want to say this. Do the Padres still have a chance in the NL West with the addition of Bauer to the Dodgers?
I think we have to ask that question in like June. We need to see a couple months of the way this kind of revamped Padres team looks. Because we know what we're going to get out of Los Angeles. You mentioned it. They didn't need another starter. Pretty sure they have like 2 or 3 starters now in the bullpen just kind of hanging out. So good for them, like you said, I guess. That's great. San Diego, I think, and this is, you know what I think is crazy, Ryan, is you see all these owners like the ownership group for the Rockies, and even with Boston, by giving away their star players, you know, cutting pennies or whatever the saying is, you know what I'm talking about, just, you know, pennies on the dollar, we're going to go, you know, balling on a budget. The Phillies lost $2 billion, but yet these teams could spend all this money and load up on all this talent, and that's what you're going to see is these like big super teams, and then everyone else just has crap. You and I and Nick the other night, Ryan, were trying to name people on the Pittsburgh Pirates, and we couldn't do it. I think we named 3 between the 2 of us. Meanwhile, you have basically all the star players on 2 or 3 teams, which shows these teams are going for it, and it's possible. The money's there. I'm sorry. Like, unless you're the Oakland Athletics, the money is probably there. You could find it. I'm sure the Dodgers found it in some, you know, bank vault somewhere, said, you know, we're going to give Trevor Bauer $40 million. Why not? His agent definitely deserves a parade for what she was able to do, which was just ridiculous, Ryan. Opt-outs after each year, as you mentioned. I mean, this is one of the most player-friendly contracts I've ever seen. Right? He has all the control. So I was impressed by that. I think I was most impressed by that. But to answer your original point, I'm going all over the place. Ask me again in like June about the Padres. So I'm not going to count them out yet, but ask me again in June.
So there's a couple things I want to respond with. Number one, you brought up his agent, Rachel Luba. I want to say that I'm not number one Rachel Luba fan. I'm sure there's other fans of hers that are bigger fans than me, but I love what she's been able to do. I love that the video series she has on Watch Momentum, that's Bauer's company's YouTube channel. She receives, which I'm not surprised about, I wish it wasn't the case, she receives a lot of hate for a number of different reasons that she doesn't deserve. I think that she's blazing a trail for other prospective female sports agents in the future. I hope that others can look at her success and hopefully achieve similar success as well. But you also brought up, and I'm glad you did, that the Dodgers are spending money and going for it, which on one hand, I get it. I get the hate because it's a big market team. It's the Dodgers. They just won a title. They've been successful for a long time now. I get why you wouldn't want to see them spend money, but on the other hand, it's refreshing, as you said, to see a team that actually does want to spend money and go for it when so many other teams don't. We've heard I mean, if you look around the league this offseason, there's really been very few teams that have actually spent a lot of money. And what the Dodgers have done, and even you and me joke about the Phillies because of what they said in a press conference in October. Even they're up there on top, close to the top for amount of money spent on free agents this year, despite losing $2 billion. So there's very few teams that have actually spent money. As you said, the money's there. Like, whatever the owners want to say, whatever you want to believe, all these teams really do have the money if they really wanted to spend it. As you said, maybe athletics maybe they don't have the money, but most of these other teams, they do have the money if they wanted to field a competitive roster, and yet they don't. You have the Rockies, you said the Pirates. There's a lot of teams that are just content being mediocre, and it's a shame. So it is nice to see that the Dodgers, despite the fact that it is the Dodgers, spending money. It is refreshing that there are still teams out there that are willing to actually try to put a winning roster together no matter what it takes.
But Ryan, here's the problem, though, is that the Dodgers are continuing to poach these players, right, among San Diego and everyone, the other teams that, as we mentioned, are going for it. All the rest of the teams are just going to see that and say, no, we're just going to get prospects and kind of build for the future. We can't compete with them now. And then it's going to make it even worse. It's this constant cycle of feeding off these smaller teams, giving them some prospects that might work out or might get traded down the road, and then just take their best player. So,
well, how do you? I don't even want to ask this question because I don't even know the answer to it. But how do you solve that? Do you institute a salary cap? Do you do something like the NBA where you can only have like a small number of max contract guys on one team? Like, how do you solve this issue in baseball? I feel like it's tough. Like the
contracts are structured differently. Obviously, there's a lot more games involved, and there's a lot of stuff that we obviously don't know with like the players' union and the owners, and there's a lot of tension there. So to fix it, I don't really have the answer to that question, but it's an issue that is really most glaring in this sport because people want to bash the NBA for the Warriors being good for a while. Those guys were all drafted, right? Those original 3 guys were all drafted by that team. In baseball, a lot of these guys, while some are homegrown, right, through the minor league system and whatever, and a lot of them, you have to go out and get stars at the deadline in order to have a team in baseball to make a run down the stretch, right? We've seen over the past couple of years with World Series champions, what are your midseason acquisitions look like? Like, you need to get that guy, or in the Dodgers case last year, going out and get Mookie Betts right before the season starts. So, I don't have the answer to that question, but this is the sport where it's most glaring. And it's frustrating in some ways because if your team's not one of those 3 that are going for it, we talked about it in the open. You're just kind of sitting there like I am saying, I'm going to win 70 games. Hopefully we'll see some good ones, so it's just, it's upsetting, but
this is,
I don't know.
We say this a lot when we talk about things on the podcast. This subject in and of itself is an entire episode. So I don't want to, we might talk about it a little bit when we do our baseball preview episode or episodes probably, but there was one other baseball thing that I wanted to talk about. The news just came out today that their Major League Baseball is going to, according to multiple sources, I saw it on The Athletic from, Saris and Ken Rosenthal, they are going to deaden the ball this year. More teams are going to add humidors for ball storage. So nobody knows what this is going to do yet. I mean, we have to wait and see. But are you in favor of deadening the baseball, I guess is what I want to ask, because I was of the belief that I think MLB should deaden the baseball a little bit. Hopefully they didn't try to overcompensate, but I do think that deadening the baseball was necessary based on what we've seen over the past couple seasons.
Yeah, I think we're not going to know the full effects of it until after we get a big sample size. I agree to some extent. As you mentioned, we hope and pray that they didn't overcompensate, and then we're going to get the complete opposite of what we've seen. But for me, I'm not as polarized on this issue as opposed to, as we just talked about with teams going for it and rosters and everything. I'm much more involved with that side of baseball, but I think it's worth a try. The game's came under a lot of scrutiny over the past couple of years, and we'll see.
Apparently, from what I'm reading in this Athletic article, so basically the ball is going to be less bouncy and get a little smaller, so the effects might cancel each other out. I don't know. I'm not smart enough to figure all these numbers out. Unfortunately, I gotta see in calculus. I don't know any of this stuff, but it'll be fun to watch. I mean, that'll be a nice storyline that we get to talk about and we get to watch, especially as the summer goes on. As long as the season can go on, seeing if deadening the baseball really does solve one of the issues with the sport. I mean, we also saw the report that came out today that the MLB and the Players Association seem to agree on 7-inning doubleheaders and a runner starting on second again, but there won't be a universal DH. So once again, that's something we can talk for a whole episode about, but that's just stuff to keep in mind, basically. I did want to spend time on college hoops because by the time you listen to this episode, a new tournament field of 6-day projection from my co-host will be up live on the website. So I did want to talk about college hoops. I want to kind of frame it in that lens. So I'm going to go through just some parts of your article, Matt, some of your projections, and then just talk about them a little bit. So in Region 1, you have Gonzaga as a 1 seed. You say that in this region, as you have it right now, teams like Oklahoma State and Minnesota never will get the recognition they deserve due to the conferences they are in, but are capable of knocking off the nation's best. So I'll ask you this. Given the perfect draw, how far do you think those two teams could advance in March?
I would say Sweet 16 for either. Obviously, the current draw that I gave them, probably not. Getting Gonzaga and Illinois respectively in the second round is not ideal for any team. But as you said, in the perfect draw, they could sneak into the Sweet 16 for sure. Cade Cunningham, one of, if not the best player in this this very deep draft class that's coming up. And then obviously Marcus Carr, who's averaging like 20 points a game. If you haven't watched a Minnesota game yet, do yourself a favor and do it. I think they play, well, I guess for anyone listening, I think they're playing now or maybe yesterday. Regardless, you missed them, but catch them for the next game. So the Big Ten and Big 12 have some good teams ahead of them, but those two teams are the ones that go under the radar. Will get a sneaky win here or there. And have some really cool guards that you're going to see in the NBA, especially Cunningham. So watch an Oklahoma State game. He's probably going to be the number 1 pick.
Now, in this region, Matt, you have a team that we actually talked about in the last episode, which is Drake. They did suffer their first loss. They were undefeated. But you said that they have a very important a very important series for the season coming up this weekend when they play Loyola Chicago. So what should we be looking for in that series with Loyola Chicago this weekend?
I think whoever wins those, if a team sweeps that series, Ryan, those 2 games, I think it knocks the other one completely out of the bracket.
Wow.
It's going to, depending on which one it is, they could probably sneak in, but the bubble is a little tight. I think for Drake at least, that loss to Valpo was not a great one. It took them from like 13th in net all the way down to like below 30, which doesn't seem like a lot, but for a team that was undefeated and suffered their first loss, that's a pretty big jump. But I really like Loyola Chicago. I like them more than Drake. I think it's going to be decided at Arch Madness. I think if they're still playing that, which is their conference tournament in St. Louis, Arch Madness, they'll probably meet again. But I will say it's going to be 2 must-watch games, and especially now with no football, Ryan, must-watch games. So people can't play we got to watch Aaron Rodgers play excuse or something kind of thing. Like it's, they're there. It's going to be a good game.
Now, going through the rest of Region 1, I did say that Gonzaga was the 1 seed. You had mentioned that Illinois is the 2 seed. So what are there any other teams in here that you want to make a note of, you have a special shout-out to that people should be paying attention to?
I think Texas Tech is really good. Anyone who remembers the name Mac McClung, who played at Georgetown, transferred over. Chris Beard has a really good squad there. Another name that might seem familiar, Marco Santos Silva, who came over from VCU. So they really hit the transfer market hard, and it's paying off. They're just, in the same conference as Baylor, Texas, and Oklahoma. So that's why they're a 4 seed. But they're pretty solid. Tennessee, I'm kind of shaky on recently, but they're there. But in terms of other teams, Ryan, Belmont, Rick Byrd retires a couple years ago. You bring in Casey Alexander, and they picked up right where they left off. Rick Byrd built that program into just a power in the Ohio Valley. And they're still winning 20-plus games every year. Obviously, 20 might be hard to get this year just because of the games you're playing, but they could win 1 or 2 games like they do every year. They're the sexy 12 seed, Ryan. There's always that sexy 12 seed matchup that you're going to pick. Everyone says it. If they're at a 12 seed, just pick them. Save yourself the trouble.
Well, in Region 2, and by the way, this is all going to come from Matt's article that's, by the time you're listening to this, is up on the website, so go check that out. Region 2, you have Baylor as the 1 seed, and as you point out in your first sentence, which I think a lot of people would agree with, it feels like 2 spots in the Final Four are already taken by Gonzaga and Baylor. That's just how good they are this season. You have Houston as the 2 seed. We talked about them a week ago. You said the state of Texas has some really good basketball teams. Talked about Texas Tech. Houston's one of them. What do you like a lot about Houston?
Great guard play, great defense. Things we talked about in November, things we talked about last year, things we talked about even a couple years ago, Ryan, on our radio show. It's just Kelvin Sampson's always had a really good defense, and I'm going to make sure I get the number right. There we go. They ranked 5th in terms of defensive efficiency, and they're just really solid overall. And I think this is probably one of the weaker of the 4 that I created, Ryan, in terms of regions, but a Baylor-Houston Elite 8 game would be must-watch television. It would be really solid. And listen, it's not the Kentuckys and Kansases, right? Those are going to draw all the eyes, but that would be a really solid matchup. And if your following question is going to be, are there any teams that could kind of beat them in this grouping, Ryan? No. This is, maybe Iowa, but Iowa kind of made me change. This was supposed to go up on Monday, Ryan, but Iowa lost to Indiana right before the Super Bowl, and then I had to go back and change like 5 things. So thanks, Fran McCaffrey. But yeah, Wisconsin, maybe. Missouri, maybe. But, not a lot to knock off Baylor, that's for sure.
Well, let's. This isn't about knocking off a top seed, but you do mention this team, and it kind of circles back to an article you did a couple of weeks ago about tempo. So St. John's, you said they're 7-7 in the middle of January, but now they've reeled off 6 straight, including 2 overranked opponents, and they played one of the fastest paces in the country. So right now you have them sliding in at the 11 seed. Could this be a trendy upset pick in your opinion, or do you think that maybe they will bow out just in the first round?
Well, if they keep playing the way they're playing, they're going to be higher than an 11 seed. So they force turnovers, they get out in transition, they score quickly. Mike Anderson just has done. Those are what his teams do. And obviously, we had kind of a connection to St. John's last year with a Monmouth guy there and Nick Rutherford. They've produced some really solid guards over the past couple of years. Shamori Pons, who was in the G League last year. I want to say Sir Dominic Pointer, but I get him confused if he went to Syracuse or not. But in any case, they're playing really well. They beat Villanova. I think, could they bow out quickly? Depending on the matchup, Ryan, absolutely. I think that's a great way to put it. They could either do that or they could be a trendy upset pick. So that's going to be a check back next month for them.
Well, one of those ranked teams that they beat was Villanova. And you have them as a 2 seed right now in Region 3. The number 1 seed right now, you have Michigan, who have looked good all season long. Of course, they have had the COVID issues. But so Matt, you talked about how good Baylor is, you talked about how good Houston is. So if we go to Region 3, is Michigan kind of unbeatable as a 1 seed, or with the right matchup, could you see them falling?
So Michigan doesn't have as many quality wins as some of the other teams in their conference, but one thing they do have is just depth and really good shooting, really good efficiency. They're really solid offensively, one of the best teams in the country offensively. And Villanova would be a really tough matchup for them. I had Villanova originally on the 1 line, and I said this, I think, in the article, is no disrespect really to what Villanova did. It's more just a credit to Michigan. It's not even Michigan. It's another team that we'll mention in a little bit that kind of kicked them off the 1 line. But there's like 6 teams that could be a 1 seed right now and only 4 spots. And the other 2 are kind of sitting in the other region. But yeah, Michigan, Villanova, I guess Texas, sure. Maybe Oklahoma, but there's Florida State in there, which I love Leonard Hamilton. So there's a lot of teams in there that could be in the mix. But Michigan, at least in our time in college, Ryan, has been a very good team in March. Granted, that was under John Beeline, but they've been a staple in March for our older years.
Well, you brought up some teams I did actually want to ask you about. So you brought up Texas, Oklahoma, Florida State. I know you're a big Florida State guy. Loyola Chicago, a mid-major that we had talked about a little bit ago. You have them in this region. So is this the region of chaos, would you say? It seems like there's a lot of really solid teams in this region.
Yeah, there could be. And I think a lot of the chaos could come more in the Sweet 16 with potentially Florida State or a Texas knocking off one of the top seeds. Texas has been kind of getting on my nerves lately. They weren't the same team they were a couple months ago. I mean, granted, they've had some COVID issues as well. Can't really criticize any team this season just because of a 2-week pause does so much to your team. More in Villanova's case, like a 40-day pause. Yeah. So can't really critique anybody, but yeah. And don't forget, Ryan, I mean, I didn't mention this in the article, but like teams like Grand Canyon, I mean, that's a really good team. Grand Canyon is a team that can knock off a higher seed depending on the matchup. So Bryce Drew out there, Scott Drew's brother, doing crazy things with Grand Canyon. When COVID wasn't a thing or won't be a thing, you got to go to a game at Grand Canyon. I've never been, but I've watched on TV, and it gets pretty loud in there for a small mid-major school.
Well, I agree. I mean, I don't watch as many games as you do, but I mean, I've seen the highlights from that school, and it seems like a really neat atmosphere, so that's definitely a place that I would like to go to. Region 4, and you alluded to, I think one of the teams in this region at least. You have Ohio State as the 1 seed, Alabama as the 2 seed, playing a MAC school that we saw a lot in Siena. So what do you think? What are your thoughts on this region? You say there are 2 number 1 seeds in this section of the bracket, but Ohio State deserved the slight edge. So once again, it seems like there's some pretty good teams in this region as well.
Yeah, Ohio State has 8 quad 1 wins, leads the country. Bama has 4, I believe. I should know because I wrote this a couple hours ago, but wanted to make sure. Yep. In any case, both really good teams. Both don't have a lot of holes. Experience and depth on both squads. Even if you go down the list, you got the defending champions in there still, the defending champions of Virginia. You got Creighton in there, West Virginia, two really solid teams that just have the tough luck of being in conferences with top 5 teams. Kansas, for whatever that's worth, they're not really exciting this year. And you've probably seen the tweets. I mean, this is the first time without Kentucky, Duke, almost all the blue bloods since 1961 in the top 25, something like that. And just shows how much parity there is this year across the nation. You got Oregon and North Carolina as an 8 and a 9 seed, Ryan. So in terms of name value, that's this region. So if you're reading and listening, I mean, you got Ohio State, Oregon, North Carolina, West Virginia, Creighton, Kansas, Virginia, even Purdue, BYU, Alabama. I mean, that's a loaded bracket. So that one would, in terms of region of chaos, not really, but a lot of teams that could be in the Final Four from that.
Your Final Four in Indiana, Seton Hall, Colorado State, and Stanford. You have 8 teams just missing the cut as of right now. Maryland, St. Louis, Richmond, VCU, Dayton, Utah State, Providence, and SMU. If you had to pick, I'll just say, if you had to pick one team that's currently in the just missed the cut that you think could make the tournament, who is that team?
Probably Maryland, because of the conference they play in. All 9 of their losses are in Quad 1, which just is insane. But they're 10 and 9. So I'm not going to give in to the peer pressure yet. Lenardi has them in. I think Andy Katz has them in too. I'm not doing it yet, but I usually like to put in more teams on the outside and do kind of a ladder. So if you kind of read going down, that's kind of the order that I would put them in. Maryland is probably the best case scenario. Utah State, maybe if they could steal a game or two. I think I mentioned that in the article also. But the A-10 is I was really high in the A-10 in the preseason, Ryan, but they're beating up on each other so much, and that's rough to do in a mid-major conference because you're going to, as John Rothstein would say, it's cannibalizing itself. So it's a tough break for them because they have a lot of really good teams.
Absolutely. Well, this is going to be I'm going to say recurring segment on our podcast for the next 4 or 5 weeks, just because we are kind of in the stretch run for college basketball. There's a lot of big games coming up. A lot of movers are probably going to show up. So good thing we have a college basketball expert on the show that can kind of break down everything that's going on. So yeah, that was a fun college basketball segment. Matt, it's your favorite time of the podcast.
Are we talking NASCAR?
We're going to save that for last. We're going to save the best for last.
Okay, cool. I'm ready to talk about dirt tracks. I'm excited.
Your favorite time, America, Big Four sports trivia, baby. Oh, yeah.
So I got Mickey Mantle's number wrong again. I admit my mistake, and as a result, my strategy is going to change. If I'm 100% not sure, I'm just not going to answer the question, so I don't embarrass myself.
That's a smart move. All right, so I have not looked at these questions until right now. Okay, here we go. We're starting with a basketball question about basketball strategy. In basketball, if a player's teammate decides to stand in the way of an opponent to better free up a shot for his teammate, what offensive strategy is being put in place?
So that would be a screen or a pick.
There you go. All right.
Whatever. Yeah.
Good start. Okay. This has to do with another famous Yankee.
Oh my
How
God.
many games did Joe DiMaggio's hitting streak last?
So I don't know the exact number. I am aware of this streak, so I want it to be known that I'm not like an idiot, right? I know it, but I don't know the exact number. So I'm going to skip it because we have Yankee fan friends that are going to just bother me. And I've said this last week too, and I've said this to you. I'm not the biggest baseball historian, not like I used to be. I knew a lot more when I was a kid.
The answer, 56 games in a row. So just as Mickey Mantle's jersey was in the 50s, Joe DiMaggio's hitting streak lasted 56 games in a row.
I would have said probably 57 or 58. So, you know what? It's fine. Next one.
In baseball, which is the most frequently stolen base?
Do they have the numbers to back this up here? Well,
I
yeah, I guess
I
second
assume that they
base.
do. That's
Yeah,
that's
second
what
base,
they have.
yeah. I was about to say, this is... You're going to have some stats to back that one up. Have you ever stole home, Ryan? What have you stolen every base? In your
No,
playing
I
career?
wasn't a big speedster. I do have a stealing home story though. So this was the minor leagues of CYO. Now, you're supposed to look to your third base coach for a sign before the the at bat starts, right? Or before each pitch. So I step out, I look, doesn't do anything, nothing. I'm like, okay, let me dig in here. So I get up there, the ball comes to the plate, and then it goes behind the catcher. I'm just standing there because the ball's like right there. I'm like, there's no way they're gonna send this guy, right? I look over, the guy's like halfway down the baseline. I'm like, what are you doing? So I try to scamper out of there. He's out by a mile. It's like one of the least close plays I've ever seen. I don't know who sent him. I don't know if it was his own decision. But the moral of the story is don't steal home unless you're sure you can get there. Because that ended the inning for us. I could have gotten a nice RBI added to my stat line. No. Someone was real selfish. I don't know if it was the third base coach. I don't know if it was the player. Someone got real selfish. And it ruined my RBI opportunity.
2 outs with a guy on third. That's a really good RBI opportunity there.
I know.
Rip one down the line, Ryan. I mean, that's... Some snow just melted off my roof. But yeah. So I've only stolen second, fun fact. I just was not a very good baseball player, as you might remember. I enjoyed my time in the field. That was fun, but base running, I never really got on base enough to steal bases. I think I stole second a couple times. So I got at least 1 or 2 free tacos for America to my name.
Yeah, I stole second a couple of times. I got picked off once, that was embarrassing. I got picked off at first. It's just it was a lapse in judgment. I mean, you're always supposed to pay attention on the field, but sometimes your mind just goes somewhere else, and then all of a sudden you look over, the guy has the ball in his glove, and you're out. So that was embarrassing, having to take the walk of shame back to the dugout. But I can say that was the only time I ever got picked off. So at least it only happened once.
I can't remember if I ever did. I wish I played baseball now. I would appreciate it so much more than I did as a kid. Like, I guess for some people, it's kind of the opposite, and you grow appreciation, or you have a lot of it as a kid, and it kind of wanes as you get older. I'm the opposite. I would love it if we got like an adult softball league team going, Ryan. I would love it.
Yeah, I've tried finding, I had tried finding before the pandemic. I had tried finding recreational leagues. It's difficult. I thought it would be real easy, like a nice little online board. You just put your name and email and you get in. Like, no, I didn't think it would be this difficult.
We got to form a Monmouth team. I'm not going in with guys I don't know. We got to get like a full team of people ready to go.
It's got to be with people that you know at this age.
Yeah. I mean, we have a couple good baseball and softball stars on our BAP roster. If you go on and listen to some podcasts and hear some stories. I mean, we got some bats, that's for sure. We got some bats.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we could make a nice team. So hopefully when things all get back to normal, we'll be able to explore that. That could be good video content, I think. BAP plays softball. I think that would be fun. We've had good video content before of members of BAP playing kickball. So I don't know if it would live up to that, but...
Yeah, well, how about certain members of BAP cheating and other members of BAP trying to call them out on that? Yeah,
okay. Well, let's move on. Let's not start a intra-brand turmoil, excuse my grammar. Some claim that hockey's origins, you're not going to get this one, were as early as the 1700s, but when was the National Hockey League founded?
Now, hold on.
Oh, wait a minute. Did I underestimate you?
No, I got two answers here. One of them might be really wrong. Actually, I have a better chance with two answers than I do with one. So I'm going to say 1917 or 1893.
I need you to pick one.
1917.
That's correct. Wow.
Was it really? Wow.
Okay. I underestimated you.
Yeah, you did.
Okay, well, here's an easy one to reward you for knowing that. I don't know how you knew that one.
I don't know either. I really don't. I think it's because because I'm a fan of an original six team.
That makes sense.
So that time frame kind of matches up.
I didn't really think about that one. And I can assure you guys, if you're only listening to the audio version, he did not look behind him at the Stanley Cup champion banner. So I don't even know if the year would be on there. But
no, it goes from recent to furthest down, so it would have been covered by my couch.
Well, here's an easy question to reward you for getting the hard one correct. Which Neil Diamond song has been played at every Boston Red Sox game since 2002?
Sweet Caroline.
Okay. True or false?
Oh, go ahead.
The San Jose Sharks hockey team use a foghorn as a goal horn.
That's true, I think, right?
That is true.
Yeah, that is true, yeah. Bruins do something similar too, to some horn that sounds like it's from like the Haba. So, like my accent, the Boston accent, the Haba.
You'd fit right in if you moved up to like Massachusetts or New Hampshire. By the way, I need to say this: I was young when I visited New Hampshire, but it was cool. So I'd recommend anybody out there, you're looking for a cool place to go to New Hampshire. That's a neat place. What is the name of the Dallas NFL team?
The Cowboys.
Wow, that was a difficult one. Okay.
The Dallas Andy Daltons.
See, this would have been good Super Bowl trivia for Friday. When was the first Super Bowl? That wasn't called the Super Bowl.
Here we go with years again.
Well, you could do some mental
this is really
math.
easy. Yeah, this is really easy. Hold on, I'm going to do the mental math real quick. Oh my God! Hold on. What was this, 55? You know what? My first initial reaction was 1960. I'm going to go with that.
The answer is 1967. If you had more time, I think you could have figured it out. I appreciate you just pushing on for the podcast's sake. 1967.
It's already established I can't do the mental math. I took a stab. I didn't want to make bad radio, so there we go.
Which baseball player was also known as the Great Bambino?
Oh, Ryan, that's a hard one. We're going to have to lean Babe Ruth.
If a football kicker, more mental math for you here. If a football kicker attempts a field goal from the 30-yard line, how long is the attempt?
I always get this off by yardage. Isn't it like 40 yards? Isn't it the extra 10 yards or something?
The answer is 47.
Yeah, I get that wrong all the time. I always kind of deferred to other people when we called football games for that.
You get 10 yards for the end zone plus an extra like 6 or 7 for where the holder sets up.
That's where I forget. I knew the 10 yards in the end zone, but I always forget to account for the extra little 5.
Well, here's the final Big Forest sports trivia card. We're really working through these. I think we're almost done. What is the most common type of pitch thrown by pitchers in baseball?
Fastball.
All right. And to see if you can end on a W, true or false? Basketballs are orange because of pigments in the special type of rubber used to make them.
I think that's true. True, sure.
The answer is actually false, if you can believe that. I thought that was true as well, but you got 8 correct, so that's another good number. So you're pretty consistent with all this stuff. As I said, I think we're almost done. We have to... Yeah, we got to be almost done. I'm sure we'll figure out when we get to... Or I'll go back and listen to the first question. That way I know. But we're making our way through. Matt, we're close to the end of the podcast, but an important sport is coming up soon, and it's not baseball. It's NASCAR. So by the time you listen to this, the first real big event of the season is tonight, and it's the Busch Clash. And so that is an exhibition race. It doesn't pay points, and eligible drivers are invited to compete. There were 24 eligible drivers this year. 21 of them are going to compete. So if you go over to our website, you'll see that I have a full preview up, going through everything that you need to know to be ready for this season. So, Matt, I'm going to let you ask the questions. I'm going to do what's called a pro radio move and give myself a break. So what do you want to know about NASCAR that I can tell you in this segment, which is the final segment of the episode?
Yeah, so you when we did a little reversal here, and you were asking me questions about college hoops. You know a lot more about college hoops than I do about NASCAR, but I'm going to try and ask some grade A questions here. Okay. The first one, Ryan, you mentioned in this article, again, that's coming out. It should be out by the time you're listening to this. Yep. Little plug there. You mentioned dirt tracks, Ryan. Mm-hmm. Now, I have never seen a dirt track race in my lifetime. I think you mentioned it in here. I'm trying to find it. Great radio. Since, you can correct me if I'm wrong, since like the 60s, right? It's been a while since we've seen dirt track at NASCAR's biggest stage. So tell me about how this is going to be different than, hitting the pavement and, zooming around on the asphalt.
Well, so this is the first time since 1970 that a NASCAR race will be held on dirt, and surprisingly, they're doing it at Bristol, which is typically one of the more popular races of the year. It typically puts on a good show. You would have thought that maybe they'd choose a different track or just a different location altogether, but instead it's actually already started. If you go online and you look things up, you can actually they're starting to put the dirt down and form it into a dirt track. So it'll be interesting. Obviously, these cars have never been on dirt before, so I don't know how they're going to handle. Of course, if you'd like to know how cars handle on dirt, you can watch Disney Pixar's Cars now. But it's an adjustment. I mean, a lot of these guys obviously grew up the way you get into NASCAR. A lot of these guys, you start by racing on dirt. So some of these guys will have that type of advantage. They know. They'll have some general idea of what the car should do into the turns and on the straightaways and stuff, but I don't think we're fully going to know how this is going to work until we actually see the cars start moving. Hopefully it'll be a good race, because that would encourage NASCAR, I think, to maybe do this at least once a year moving forward, which I think the fans would appreciate. It kind of goes back to the roots of the sport, but it'll be an experiment, I think, is the best way to describe it. As I said, Bristol's one of the it's usually a pretty popular race in terms of the product that's on the track, but they're taking a big risk with this, and for their sake, I hope it pays off. I hope that the fans enjoy it.
So I always liked Bristol, because I'll watch sometimes, kind of flip through the channels, keep it on for a little bit, and excuse my ignorance if I get the terminology wrong, but this is like the actual, it's like a legit kind of stadium, Bristol, right? I mean, it's that short track, right? Wasn't it like a half a mile?
It's the last great American Coliseum, is what they describe it as.
Yeah, and so here's my outsider looking in way of thinking here. If you put dirt in that, and that close proximity with all those cars going around, how's the camera going to be able to... The dirt's going to be kicking up, and people are going to be breathing in the dirt. Well, hopefully they'll be wearing a mask, so it'll go right on their mask. But the camera, how are you going to be able to see it? It's going to be like a fog, right? I mean, am I the only one that's thought of this?
Well, I mean, they'll have different cameras as they do for each race. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it'll be fun to watch. I mean, I trust. I mean, Fox is a billion-dollar corporation. I trust that they'll put the cameras in the right spots to make sure that they stay as pristine as possible. And I'm sure that the company wants their million-dollar cameras to stay functional too. It'll be a fun event. I mean, this is new for me. I'll be honest. I don't watch a lot of dirt track racing as it is. I mean, I'll kind of check out the biggest events during the year, like the Snowball Derby, the Chili Bowl, stuff like that. But this is going to be my first real foray into watching a full dirt event, and I'm sure a lot of other people's too. So I'm excited. I'm I'm cautiously optimistic. I do think that this will work out and it'll encourage them to go to dirt more, but all we can do is wait and see.
So you mentioned some new courses, Ryan,
Yes.
this year. So I don't know where some of these are, so you might have to fill in the blank. You mentioned these three for the first time. I know where the Indianapolis Road Course is. I know what that's about, but then you say Circuit of the Americas and Road America. So that's going to be on July 4th, going to be the Red, White, and Blue Bash. I just made that up on July 4th. And then you also mentioned Nashville for the first time, which I remember you telling me about and I remember reading about. Might be missing one or two, but just trying to hit some of the big ones. What is your what are you most excited for? What new course or track, whatever it's called, are you most excited? And which one should I watch as the fan who's going to try and get into NASCAR to have a conversation with you each week about it?
As someone that just got into Formula One last year, because that was a sport that kind of was fun to watch. I got really into it because a number of reasons. I'm really excited for Circuit of the Americas. So that's the track in America that hosts the F1 race each year. And now NASCAR for the first time ever is going there. It's located in Austin, Texas. It's a 3.41 mile circuit. And I can't pretend to say I know if it'll be good for NASCAR. I know I enjoy watching it. I've enjoyed watching it for F1, and I got the F1 video game, and it's fun to drive around in. So I'm personally excited for that. I've been a big proponent of adding more road courses for NASCAR, so I'm glad that they've actually done that. Road America, that's located in Wisconsin. Lower series have raced there in NASCAR, but the Cup Series hasn't. And the lower series typically put on a good show, in my opinion. So I think NASCAR, the Cup Series will too. That'll be fun. I do think it's kind of nice. I mean, you kind of alluded to it. Road America, July 4th. It just kind of makes sense. The Indianapolis Road Course, they're no longer racing on the oval like they always have. Now they're going to run the road course configuration that the Xfinity Series has run recently. Once again, I think the Xfinity Series put on a good show there. But when you think of Indianapolis, you think of just running the oval and kissing the bricks at the end. I think the road course will probably be better product-wise. The oval really never was very good, especially recently. But that should be a good one. You know about Sonoma. That's the one in California. Watkins Glen, that's the one in upstate New York. So they're coming back after the pandemic. We saw the Daytona Road Course and the Charlotte Roval last year. They're coming back as well. You'll see the Daytona Road Course tonight for the Busch Clash. So they race there tonight, and then they'll race there in a couple weeks. So that's... Matt, for you, I would definitely check out Circuit of the Americas. I think that'll be historic for sure. Just seeing how the cars look in comparison to F1. Nashville, I think, might also be good. But once again, the lower series used to race there, but this is the first time Cup is going there. So they've made some small renovations, and we'll see. We have some drivers there that have driven that track before when they were younger, but it's been a while, so maybe that'll be a good one too. I'm excited, though. I say in the article that for years fans have wanted the bland schedule to be changed, and finally, for a number of reasons, NASCAR is finally able to do that for 2021, and hopefully they'll be able to add some more new tracks as the years go by.
So one thing that I think me and a lot of sports fans are intrigued by is 2311. Ryan, 2311 Racing, Denny Hamlin, and my guy Michael Jordan. Going to start this, and again, I don't know the terminology, but they have this new brand or car kind of thing. Bubba Wallace is going to race in the number 23, which I think is really cool in itself, being owned by Michael Jordan, and he's going to race in that. So that's gauging my interest as a basketball guy. Talk to us a little bit about that, Ryan. I was very intrigued to see that. Not going to lie, whenever I see Michael Jordan anywhere, I get a little intrigued. So Bubba Wallace has always been one of my favorite drivers, and started following him even more so last year. So what does this do for him? I also like Denny Hamlin too. So got a lot of my favorite people in one collaboration.
Well, for Bubba, it gives him the best opportunity he might ever have in the Cup Series to drive a top-tier equipment car. this you'd figure, so they've already sold all their sponsorship out. They did that very quickly after the team was officially announced. That's hard to do in NASCAR. I mean, some of these teams still don't have their full season all laid out in terms of sponsors. Some are still looking for sponsors. So the fact that Bubba and the entire team was able to get sponsorship locked down almost immediately just goes to show how much support is behind this guy that's going to be in the car. Having said that, because he's driving for a team that's owned by Michael Jordan, there's going to be a lot of pressure immediately, which is fair. This car, with the money they have, the resources they have, all the funding they're going to have from sponsors, it should be one of the better rides in the field sooner rather than later. Is that this year? I don't know. As I say in the article, it's usually not fair to expect a lot out of a first-year team, even one like 2311 with so much support behind them. But Bubba has looked good in some top equipment before. He did win 4 races with the Kyle Busch Motorsports truck back in 2014. So when he's had good equipment, he's normally done pretty well. So I think that, number one, the playoffs, it shouldn't only be a goal. I'd say it probably should be a necessity. I think they should be able to at least point their way in. In terms of wins, I'm not expecting a win this year, but I think that there's the potential, especially with the revamped schedule. I think they'll have some opportunities. But it's an exciting time for NASCAR. The fact that this new global icon owner decided to enter the sport, I hope that it encourages more guys like Michael Jordan to enter the sport, because I think it's good. You have this guy that, as you said, as a basketball fan, he's going to bring in other fan bases and put more eyes on NASCAR, and I think that's what the sport needs. So hopefully this all works out well and it encourages other people to join the sport as well.
So last question.
Yeah.
So I see that no Clint Boyer, Jimmy Johnson, or Matt Kenseth. Those are 3 names that we grew up with. At least names that I remember when I watched NASCAR before. So who are your favorites for this year?
In terms of, like, for the title?
I will let you interpret favorites. So whether it be for the title or favorites on a consistency basis, interpret that however you will.
Well, I got to imagine Kevin Harvick will be at the top again. He had a very good season last year, but he did not make the championship 4. That's just how the playoff system goes in NASCAR. You have to not only some people say it's unfair, some people don't like it. I can see the argument, especially after the season Kevin Harvick had last year. It is what it is, but I think he'll be strong again this year. I think all 3 Gibbs cars will be good and in championship contention. They had a down year last year outside of Denny. Denny carried the team, but I think Kyle Busch and Martin Truex Jr. will get back to victory lane more than once this season. And Hendrick should take a step forward. I mean, they have a good young stable of drivers. You bring in Kyle Larson. I understand if people don't want to be a fan of his because of what had transpired last spring. I totally get that, but as a racer, his talent is evident, and I think he should really help elevate that roster that already has the defending champion in Chase Elliott. So if one of those, I know I just named a bunch of drivers, so that's a pro move. That's, it's hard for me to be wrong now, but if one of those drivers doesn't win the championship, I would be very surprised. Absolutely. But I'm with you in terms of drivers that I want to see do well. Bubba Wallace for sure. Matt DiBenedetto, who this is his final year in the 21. It's already known that he's going to be replaced after this season, so hopefully he has a good year and finds a new ride. I kind of mentioned in the article that there could be a lot of rides open this offseason. So these guys, hopefully that are in contract years, hopefully they do well enough to earn a new contract and stay at the highest level of the sport. But Fox is branding this as the best season ever. I'll be honest, I don't know if I would quite go that far, but there's a lot of intrigue, and that intrigue should only grow as the years go on. The next-gen car comes out next year, so hopefully this is going to build momentum for the years ahead.
Yeah, talking NASCAR, I'm excited. So when's the official season start? Daytona 500.
So the Daytona 500 is Sunday, Valentine's Day. So if you want a fun way to spend a time with your partner, you can turn on the Daytona 500. I'm sure that they would appreciate it. there's nothing else I'd rather do on Valentine's Day than watch some motorsports. Pitbull is going to be he's going to be there. He's going to give the command, I think. So that'll be. He actually owns a team now, which is
Does
exciting.
he really?
Yeah, he owns Trackhouse.
Yeah. I had no idea Pitbull was a NASCAR fan, so that'll be a reason to tune in. So I'm excited. They usually start at what, 2:30, 3 o'clock?
They will start after 3. That's another thing that NASCAR fans really don't like. They really wish these races would start earlier in the afternoon, and I tend to agree. But for TV purposes, I understand they want these things to be in that kind of window. So, yeah, it'll start after 3 p.m. I think the things say 3:05. It ain't going to start at 3:05. It'll start later than 3:05, probably closer to 3:30. And hopefully there's no weather issues. Hopefully it's just a nice, clear day. You can get the race in, and hopefully it'll be a good season. So, as you said, that was talking NASCAR. Wow. That's the most we're going to talk about NASCAR for a while. Don't worry. We're not a NASCAR podcast, so don't worry about that. So, Matt, do you have any other thoughts that you want to get out before we say goodbye until either next Tuesday or until Wentz gets traded? Whatever happens first.
I'm excited for whenever Carson Wentz gets traded because Philadelphia Twitter is going to be fantastic, Ryan. You get both sides of the category there. What grinds my gears this week, Ryan, is when the snowplow, after you go out and you shovel and you do all that work and you go back inside, you get a shower and you start to get comfy, and then the snowplow takes all of your work and just shoves it right back out the end of your driveway, and you got to go back out and shovel it again. So got to sneak in to grind your gears. So don't like you, snowplow guy. Made me go back out this morning of frozen ice, had to smash it a couple times and then shovel it. So it's always a hassle.
Best available podcast. This has been episode 27. Thank you for listening. And we'll catch you guys again next time.